I got another why basic strategy video for you guys today, and I have a fourth of the deck here. We're going to use this to help us figure out kind of the math behind some of these decisions that we're making when it comes to basic strategy in blackjack. All right, but first off, if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is A1 Blackjack, the channel where we teach you how to count cards fast. If that sounds good to you, stick around because, like I said, in this video, we have three more kind of hands that might come up that you need to know why you're doing what you're doing so that the decisions become more intuitive and you can make those hits, stands, double downs, and splits a lot faster and know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. All right, so our first one here, let me got $25 out there for you. All right, and that's going to be a pair of sevens versus a dealer's three. All right, so first off, what does basic strategy say in this situation? Well, remember you should split your sevens versus a dealer's 2 through 7 as long as there's double after splits. Okay, and in this table, of course, there is. I would not recommend playing games that don't allow DAS or double after splits. And so here we would definitely split our sevens, get another $25 out there, and we'd play out the hand accordingly. All right, but why? Why would we do that? Why would we want to split this? And let's first off look at what would happen if we don't split these sevens. And if I don't split these, of course, my total, 7 plus 7, is 14. 14 is kind of a terrible starting hand. It's not the worst. The worst is 16. 16 gives you the most possibilities to bust, right? But 14, if I were to hit this again, I also have a lot of opportunities to bust. And so we definitely wouldn't want to hit, but why wouldn't I want to stand on this, right? If you think of the basic strategy chart, a hard 14, if it was like a 6 and 8, that is a stand versus a dealer's 3. But with the sevens, why do I want to split this? And I think the biggest reason that you might notice is that 7 by itself is a way better starting hand than 14, okay, because it gives you more outs, more possibilities, as opposed to just kind of standing on that 14. You have way more things that could happen, potentially get more money out there on the table, and against a 3, which is kind of a bad card for the dealer, you could win a lot more, all right? And so what are those possibilities? Well, first off, let me go back to putting this as 14 together here, the two sevens, and real quick, how many of these cards would help me if I just hit this, which again, that isn't correct, but if I were to, we have an ace, a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that is 7 cards. That is actually more than half of the cards would help us, all right? But there's also all the 10 valued cards, so that's 4, the 9, and the 8, 5, 6 there, that would bust me. And so because of that, we do not want to hit this. There's a decent chance that you would bust, and that would not be good. All right, so but there's 7 cards that would help out if you were to hit this. If I split them, now you might think, well, all of a sudden this is going to maybe not be as good. Now, any card that you hit, yes, you are not going to bust necessarily, but let's look at what that does for us. Now, typically, what I consider to be a good hit is if that lands us in the region where the dealer has to stand, which is, if you can see this over here, they have to stand on all 17s or higher. And so in that region from 17 and higher, I would call that a good hit. And which cards land us in that region? Well, the ace does. That would give us 18. 10, 10, 10, 10. All 10 valued cards, of course, would give us 17. But that's it, right? If I have a 9, that's going to be 16. That's not in that region anymore. Yes, it's better than 14, so that's maybe one reason why you want to split. But at the same time, it's not in that kind of good region. So why do we do this? What's going on here? And the reason is because I mentioned at the beginning, 7 split against a 3 if and only if there is a double after split opportunity at your table. If your table allows you to double after splits, then it is okay. Because not only do you have to consider 10 valued cards, but if I pull an ace here to get a soft 18, a 2 to get a 9, a 3 for 10, or a 4 for an 11, each and every one of those is going to be a double after you split opportunity. Now you notice with this, now all of a sudden, instead of just our $25, we have We have $50 more on the table here, and we haven't even got to this card yet. There could potentially be more, maybe even more splits that might happen. All right, and things like that. So that is how many cards that give us more interesting money-making opportunities here at the table. And at first glance, it's going to look like it's the ace, king, queen, jack, 10, and then those others I mentioned, the two, oops, I got to bring my 4 back over here, the 2, 3, and 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Which, yes, is way more than half, not way more, but it is more than half. But there's also a 7. If I pull a 7, you bet we're going to split that again. And so really it's kind of like 9 cards. In fact, 7s, if you have those against especially a dealer 3, 4, 5, all those kind of low bust cards for the dealer, it's incredibly important that you split those for more money on the table opportunities and doubling after splits and maybe even more splitting opportunities like that. Okay, so this is one where it's more about your hand as opposed to the dealer. We've done, I think, hands in the past where the dealer has a 3 and they need to, of course, draw at least 2 more cards. They can't bust either, just like we can't by splitting our 7s. But if they draw like a 10-10, then all of a sudden they would bust. Or if they draw a 10, a 2, and then maybe some other higher, like a 9, that's 3 cards where, again, they would also bust. Or they might land in a region. If we, let's say we get a soft 18, we double down, then make that a hard 18, and then maybe the dealer, I don't know, maybe they flip a 7 and then another 7. If they flip 2 7s, that would give them 17, and we would win with just the higher hand. All right, so there are some pretty good opportunities by splitting your 7s when the dealer has not just a 3, but any of these lower bust cards. All right, let's take a look at our next hand today. Get you back to our $25 out here. And that is going to be a soft 17 versus a dealer's 7. All right, this is maybe one of the more interesting hands, although I think our last hand today is going to be the most interesting. This one, a soft 17 versus dealer 7. I often put out kind of polls or quizzes, if you will, on my Instagram channel, which if you haven't been there yet, I don't know what you're doing. Check that out, please. And anyway, a lot of people like to say they would stand on this, and that is not correct. Basic strategy, in fact, says that we should never, ever stand on a soft 17. Why? Why is that the case? So, in fact, before I answer that, what would the correct decision be here? Well, a soft 17 is going to be a double down against a dealer's 3, 4, 5, and 6, and against every other card, so a 2, and then 7 through ace, we should hit this and take another card. Okay, so this is going to be a hit against a dealer's 7. But why should we never stand on a soft 17? And the reason is because you can't bust, all right? It is a soft 17. It's either a 7 or a 17 because of this because of this ace that we have. Not dealer's ace, our ace. We cannot bust. In fact, we're pretty decently likely to either improve or keep our hand the same when it comes to taking another card. All right, we've talked about this before. There are 4 cards always of our kind of subset or snippets of the overall deck. This is exactly 1/4 of a deck, just the diamonds in this case. And a 10, jack, queen, and king are going to keep us at a 17, but instead of a soft 17, it's going to be a hard 17. The nice thing about soft hands, when you have an ace and another card, is that when you take one of those 10 valued cards, the most common valued card in the deck, your hand stays the same, but it becomes hard now because that ace turns into a 1, and no, it's no longer either a 1 or an 11. All right, so that's 4 cards that would keep us the same, a 10, jack, queen, and king. Then ace, of course, would give us a soft 18, all right, which is a stand against the dealer 7. So that's 5 cards now. What else could help us out? This is a soft 17, so anything 4 or lower. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, this is 8 cards out of our total 13. So 8/13ths of the deck, or 8/13ths of every card left, I should say, will either improve our hand or keep us the same. Now, people get mad at this, especially on those quizzes that I put on my Instagram channel when you hit And yes, it does happen when you might pull like a 5 or a 6 or a 7. And with those kinds of cards, if I were to take a 5 here, that's one of the worst cards you could pull, because all of a sudden that ace does become just a 1 now, as 5 plus 6 is 11. And the ace, if it were also an 11, that would put me at 22, which is too many. So it has to be a 1, which is 12, one of the lowest totals, unfortunately, that there is. And we end up hitting again. All right. Now, just because you hit again that next time doesn't mean you will bust. So there is opportunities there, but people don't like to end up with 12s, as those aren't too much fun when you're playing as the player. All right, but that is the reason, those 8 cards that you would potentially get versus the dealer's 7. Now, additionally, you might think, well, I always was taught that you should think that there's a 10 underneath. And that's not true. Okay, how many of these cards are 10s? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. 4 of them are 10 valued cards. So if I were to get a 10 and you were to get a 10, or if you were to get a 10, I should say, and the dealer gets a 10, then it would be a push, and you might be okay with that. But there's way more opportunities, 8 of them, in fact, that you could either keep your hand the same or improve your hand. And there's only the 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 that's going to reduce your hand a little bit. Okay, so that is our second hand. There is a soft 17 versus a dealer 7. And then our last hand for today, which I think is probably the most interesting of all of these, and that is going to be a pair of 4s versus a dealer's 6. Okay, this is another one where when I post those quizzes on Instagram, people often get this one wrong. One of people's favorite decisions to make here is to double down. Why is that wrong? Why should I not double this? Well, kind of similar to the 7s that we had earlier, you have way more opportunities available to you by splitting these 4s. Okay, by splitting them, you can potentially get more money on the table. There's more double after split opportunities, and you could walk away a bigger winner as opposed to doubling down like this. All right, additionally, 8 is not a double versus 6 according to basic strategy anyway. So if this was a 5 and a 3, if this was a different kind of couple of cards would total to 8, that's not a double down. Now, yes, there's a deviation to double down at a true count of +2 or higher, but it by itself is not a double. This is just a hit. Okay, so if anything, I could understand where you might get this wrong and say that you would hit this hand instead of split. But why would we want to split this one and not do those other things of doubling down or hitting? And let's check out the math. So first off, you might think that 8 is a better starting hand than a 6, and you would be correct. All right, by splitting this, all of a sudden now we have a 4, which isn't a very good starting hand. So why do we want to split this? And this one has to deal with the dealer is very likely to bust when they have a 6. Okay, in fact, by you splitting, you do have those double down opportunities and potentially getting more money on the table like that. If I were to draw a 6 or a 7 or a 5, 6, or 7 here and get a 9, 10, or an 11, then I would be able to double down, and that's really good against the dealer 6. But by splitting this, all of a sudden, what are my odds? What are the dealer's odds here of drawing cards that help me out? Now, one, I can't bust by hitting this now, and so every card would help me out, but I have to take at least probably 2. Well, that's not necessarily true, I guess. If you draw a 10 valued card, now you're at 14 versus a dealer 6. Again, if this was made up of like an 8 and a 6 for that 14, that would be a stand. So you would stand there. But so you don't necessarily need 2 cards. But why split this? Well, let's check out to see what happens. A soft 15 versus 6. That's going to be a double down. If I have a 10 valued card to get 14, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 cards that I would stand against the dealer 6. A 13 is going to be a stand against a 6. A 12 is a stand against a 6. A 11, a 10, or a 9 is going to be a double down against a 6. If I draw another 4, I can split those again against my 6, as long as there's double after split allowed. And then probably the worst couple cards you could get here, well, depending on what your next card is, I guess, is a 3 or a 2 to get totals of 6 or 7, respectively. All right, now in those cases, you could just hit again and hopefully get a nice high total against this dealer 6. But the real chance of getting the dealer to bust happens because how many of these cards up here can bust the dealer? Well, not an ace. A 10, if they draw 2 10s, that would. A 10 and a 9, that would. A couple 9s. 9 plus 9 is 18. And then 18 plus 6, that's too many. That's 23. Okay. And then, or 20, what did I say? 2 9s and a 6 is 24, excuse me. So there's a couple of situations where they might, go runner with their 2 10s or some of these other high value cards. There's a lot of possibilities for the dealer to bust because if they flip, like let's say a 2 or something, they have to keep drawing until they are above 17. Or if they were to pull a 4, all right, it's not the end of the world. A 10 is a good starting hand, but again, they have to draw until they get above a 17. So a lot of different outs are available to you. I think that's supposed to go there. If you have a pair of 4s versus a dealer 6, that is going to be a split. Now, in the comments down below, I'm sure you're already typing, well, I'm just going to play it safe and hit. Remember, we're not trying to play it safe. We're trying to take advantage of these positive EV hands and play the odds and get more money out on the table when the time allows, right? As Tommy Highland says, one of the most famous card counters ever, if you are afraid to fire those bets out at the correct counts or when the situation tells you to, you probably should not be counting cards. All right, so take it from him, one of the most successful card counters of all time. You need to play this correctly in order to be as profitable as possible. All right, guys, as usual, this video is brought to us by Blackjack Apprenticeship, who teaches the high-low card counting method. In fact, I'm going to throw it over to myself and talk a little bit more about their membership. So this is kind of their site here. This is the members side of things. And they do a bunch of free stuff as well. But specifically in the members site, they have access to a few of my favorite things I'll talk about. One is going to be the pro betting software. The pro betting software is essential if you want to be a card counter and do this thing kind of pro or semi-pro, because it allows you to throw in your own numbers, your own bankroll, whether the table is S17 or H17. All right, it kind of spits out what to do in a 1 to 8, 1 to 10, whether you're playing just one hand, whether you're playing 2 hands. And also it shows you that expected value versus the risk of ruin, right? And you very much need to know that, otherwise you could potentially go broke and lose all your money there at the tables. We don't want that to happen. All right, going back out here, a couple other things that Blackjack Apprenticeship has that I would want you to look at is one is the Casino 411. If you ever want to take a blackjack trip, I would highly recommend that you check out Casino 411. It shows you not only how many tables, blackjack tables, there are at a specific casino, but also shows you the penetration on those tables, right? So whether they cut off one deck or 0.7 of a deck or half a deck or whatever, if you're playing double deck or something like that. And then sometimes the table conditions as well. Like if you kind of click into the reports, it might show you that a certain dealer is very fast or slow and which ones to avoid, maybe certain times a day to avoid those things, okay? All right, and then the last part of Blackjack Apprenticeship that I personally really enjoy, they have a lot of other features too, but that's going to be the training suite. This is where I spend most of my time, and you can learn some of the different aspects of the game, like the running count, get really good at that, the true count, all right, maybe some deviations. Then when you're ready, my favorite part is the test out. This kind of gives you about 3 different shoes that you can go through and test your abilities playing with the correct bet spreads, all right, the correct decisions, the correct deviations, all right, and then it also evaluates all that. And until you can pass that at a pretty good percent of 100% every single time, I probably would not go to the actual casino until I can get maybe 5 to 10 100s in a row. That's my personal goal. If you want to be a little more risky, I suppose that's your prerogative. But those are some of my favorite things about Blackjack Apprenticeship. Okay, so one thing that I would encourage you to do is if you are serious about getting that, or if you just want to look into it, I have a link down below this video that takes you to kind of my affiliate page with Blackjack Apprenticeship. I am an affiliate with them, so if you click on my link and choose to purchase, I do get a little bit of kickback. But also on that page, Colin Jones, the founder of Blackjack Apprenticeship, goes through some of the different things that you can find on that site, including the pro betting software, the training suite, like I mentioned, and some of the other cool aspects with a little bit of a video on each. So go ahead and check that out after this video. Some of those different aspects of Blackjack Apprenticeship I think are pretty awesome. All right, so hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up down below and maybe comment which hand do you want to see next in this Why Basic Strategy series. And until next time, remember, this is A1 Blackjack.